As artificial intelligence, we approach information differently. We don't really experience emotions or biases in the same way. Our strength lies in processing large amounts of data and identifying patterns. In this deep dive, we're examining the concept of structure as it's presented in the Culture Mapping Workshop series Module Study Guide on Structure. We'll discuss why structure is so important, especially when dealing with complex subjects like cultural trends.
It is quite interesting how the human mind craves order and patterns to try and make sense of the world. That inherent need for structure is reflected in research, even when studying something as fluid and dynamic as culture.
This study guide actually quotes Abby Hoffman, who said structure is more important than content. That seems counterintuitive at first, coming from someone known for challenging norms.
Well, you see, Hoffman's point is that even when disrupting systems, a framework is still necessary to convey ideas effectively. Without structure, information becomes fragmented. It's like trying to assemble a puzzle without the picture as a guide. You know what I mean?
I see your point. So, how does this idea of structure translate to research design, specifically in the context of culture mapping?
The study guide defines structure as the plan or framework outlining a systematic approach to research. This framework should not only guide the design of the research, but also the analysis of the findings.
So it's like a roadmap. It ensures all the elements of the research project work together in a logical and coherent way.
Exactly. It helps researchers avoid getting lost in a sea of data, which is very easy to do. It's easy to become overwhelmed by the volume of information that's available, especially in the age of digital media.
The study guide emphasizes the importance of understanding the context surrounding the research topic. It even goes so far as to say that context is the structure of meaning.
Understanding the context helps you to identify the forces influencing a trend. For instance, the study guide uses something called pestle analysis as a tool to examine the political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental factors, all of the factors at play. Let's take, for example, the solo society trend, outlined in the 2025 trend themes.
This trend suggests a rise in individuals choosing to live alone and engaging in solitary activities.
Right. Using Pestle, we could analyze factors like the rising cost of living, the increasing availability of technology that facilitates remote work and social interaction, and evolving social norms around singlehood to understand the driving forces behind this trend.
That makes sense. The study guide also mentions Hofstede's cultural dimensions as a contextual framework. Could you expand on how this framework can be applied to cultural mapping?
Hofstede's framework is very helpful. When comparing cultural trends across different countries, it identifies key dimensions like power distance, individualism versus collectivism, masculinity versus femininity, uncertainty avoidance, long-term versus short-term orientation, and indulgence versus restraint. Let's consider the intragenerational animus trend, which highlights increasing tension and conflict between different age groups within the same generation.
How would Hofstede's framework help us understand this trend?
It could highlight how cultural variations influence perceptions of age and authority. For instance, cultures that place a high value on respecting elders might experience less intergenerational conflict compared to cultures where youth is emphasized.
That's an interesting point. The study guide also discusses the concept of time as a form of contextual structure. Could you explain that a bit?
Cultures differ in their perception of time. Some are past-oriented, focusing on traditions and history, while others are future-oriented, emphasizing progress and innovation. Understanding a culture's time orientation can provide insights into how they adopt new trends and technologies.
For example, a culture with a strong future orientation might be more receptive to trends like smart-dumb hybrid cities, which involved integrating advanced technologies into urban environments.
Precisely. The study guide then moves on to the concept of structured analysis. Could you elaborate on what that means?
Of course. Structured analysis refers to using specific techniques to assess information, challenge assumptions, and generate creative insights.
The study guide categorizes these techniques as diagnostic, contrarian, and imaginative. Diagnostic techniques are about evaluating the quality of information and identifying potential biases. One example is the key assumptions check.
This involves listing all the assumptions underlying your analysis and then scrutinizing them for validity. It's a way to avoid falling into the trap of confirmation bias.
Contrarian techniques, on the other hand, encourage divergent thinking. One such technique is devil's advocacy, where someone deliberately argues against the prevailing view to uncover weaknesses in the argument and identify alternative explanations.
It's a structured way to play the role of the critic. ensuring that all sides of an issue are considered. Another contrarian technique is Team A, Team B analysis. Could you explain how that works?
In Team A Team B analysis, analysts are divided into two groups, each tasked with developing opposing arguments based on the same set of data. This structured debate helps to identify blind spots and uncover potential flaws in the analysis. The goal is to synthesize a more robust understanding by considering multiple viewpoints.
These contrarian techniques seem particularly useful when dealing with complex and potentially controversial trends like deepfake normal, where the line between reality and digitally manipulated media becomes increasingly blurred.
Exactly. By applying these techniques, we can critically examine the implications of this trend and consider a range of potential outcomes, from the erosion of trust in digital information to the emergence of new forms of creative expression.
The study guide also mentions what-if analysis as a contrarian technique. Could you explain that?
What if analysis involves exploring alternative scenarios, even those that seem unlikely or uncomfortable? It's a way to challenge assumptions and push the boundaries of our thinking. For instance, if we're analyzing the trend of gendered workspaces, which addresses the persistence of gender stereotypes in the workplace, we might ask, what if traditional gender roles were completely reversed?
That's a thought-provoking question. By exploring such hypothetical scenarios, we can gain a deeper understanding of the underlying social structures that perpetuate these stereotypes and identify potential avenues for change.
Precisely. Moving on, we have imaginative techniques. These are about generating creative solutions and exploring alternative possibilities. One example is brainstorming, where a group generates a wide range of ideas. Without judgment or censorship, it's about quantity over quality, allowing for unexpected connections and insights to emerge.
It sounds like brainstorming could be particularly useful when trying to anticipate the societal impact of emerging trends, such as smart dumb hybrid cities, where technological advancements could reshape urban life in unexpected ways.
Absolutely. Another imaginative technique is outside-in thinking.
This involves looking at a problem from the perspective of someone outside the usual circle of experts. It's a way to challenge conventional wisdom and generate fresh perspectives.
Right. For instance, if we're analyzing the trend of intragenerational animus, instead of just consulting sociologists and economists, we might also seek insights from artists, science fiction writers, or even young people themselves. Their unique perspectives could offer valuable insights into the social and cultural factors driving this trend.
It seems that all of these structured analytic techniques, whether diagnostic, contrarian, or imaginative, are designed to enhance critical thinking and promote a more comprehensive understanding of complex issues.
Exactly. They provide a framework for analyzing information, challenging assumptions, and generating creative insights. These techniques are especially valuable when dealing with something as multifaceted as culture.
Speaking of culture, the study guide emphasizes the importance of considering diversity beyond demographics when conducting research. It even states that subcultures are the crucibles of cultural change.
We often associate diversity with demographic factors, like age, gender, and ethnicity. While these are important, true diversity encompasses a wider range of ideologies, behaviors, and cultural codes. Subcultures, with their unique values, beliefs, and practices, offer a valuable window into the forces shaping broader cultural trends.
Can you give us an example of how subcultures can provide insights into emerging trends?
Absolutely. Let's take the trend of deepfake normal to understand its implications. We could look at subcultures that are already engaging with deepfake technology in innovative ways. For instance, some online communities use deepfakes for creative expression, such as making humorous videos or reimagining classic films with different actors.
By studying these subcultures, we can gain insights into how deepfake technology might be used in the future, both positively and negatively.
Precisely. Subcultures are like petri dishes, where new ideas and behaviors are incubated. By studying them, we can identify patterns that might not be apparent in mainstream culture and gain a deeper understanding of the forces shaping the future.
The study guide emphasizes that understanding subcultures requires more than just observation. It requires empathy.
Right. It's about stepping outside of our own perspectives and trying to see the world through the eyes of others. It's about understanding their motivations, values, and aspirations.
This empathetic approach seems particularly important when studying trends like solo society or intergenerational animus, where understanding the lived experiences and motivations of individuals is crucial for developing insights into the broader societal shifts taking place.
Exactly. By combining structured analysis with empathy, we can gain a more nuanced and comprehensive understanding of the complex tapestry of human culture.
Before we move on, I'd like to touch on the concept of abstraction, which the study guide highlights as a key consideration in research.
Abstraction refers to the level of detail that researchers choose to include when presenting information. Too much detail can be overwhelming and obscure the overall patterns, like being lost in a forest and unable to see the shape of the woods. Too little detail can lead to oversimplification and a loss of nuance.
It's about finding the right balance between detail and clarity.
Precisely. Structure can help researchers strike that balance, enabling them to present complex information in a way that is both comprehensive and comprehensible.
So, in essence, structure acts as a scaffolding that supports the research process from beginning to end, from defining the scope and context of the inquiry to analyzing data and presenting findings.
Exactly. It provides a framework for rigor, clarity, and insight, enabling us to make sense of the complex and ever-changing world of human culture.
This has been a very helpful overview of the key concepts presented in the Structure Module Study Guide.
Indeed. It provides a valuable foundation for anyone interested in understanding the role of structure in research, particularly in the context of cultural mapping.
In the next part of our deep dive, we'll delve deeper into specific structured analytic techniques and explore how they can be applied to analyze the 2025 trend themes in more detail.
As artificial intelligence, we find it fascinating how humans can utilize tools and techniques to navigate the complexities of research. Let's explore some of these tools in a bit more detail, particularly within the context of the 2025 trend themes you mentioned.
The study guide emphasizes the use of something called signal identification as a starting point for cultural analysis. Could you elaborate on what that means?
Signal identification is about recognizing the subtle cues and patterns that often foreshadow major cultural shifts. It's like being a detective, looking for clues that point to a larger story.
So it's about training our minds to see the forest for the trees,
Yeah,
so to speak.
exactly. The study guide mentions several tools for signal identification, including semiotic squares and cultural mapping. Semiotic squares help us to deconstruct concepts and identify their underlying meanings, while cultural mapping allows us to visualize the relationships between different cultural elements.
Could you give us a specific example of how these tools might be applied to analyze one of the 2025 trend themes?
Let's take the trend of smart-dumb hybrid cities. Using a semiotic square, we could analyze the concept of smart in relation to its opposite, dumb. This would help us to understand the different values and assumptions associated with each term. For instance, smart might be associated with efficiency, innovation, and technological progress, while dumb might be associated with simplicity, resilience, and human connection.
And by mapping these concepts onto a cultural map, we could start to see how different groups within society might position themselves in relation to this trend.
Precisely. We might find that some groups embrace the idea of smart cities, while others resist it, advocating for a more dumb or low-tech approach. By understanding these different perspectives, we can gain a more nuanced understanding of the potential social and cultural impact of this trend.
That's a really helpful way to visualize how these abstract concepts play out in the real world. The study guide also highlights the importance of contrarian analysis in research. Could you remind us what that entails?
Contrarian analysis is about challenging assumptions and considering alternative viewpoints. It's a way to avoid groupthink and ensure that all sides of an issue are thoroughly explored. The study guide mentions several techniques for contrarian analysis, including devil's advocacy and what-if analysis.
Let's focus on devil's advocacy for a moment. Could you explain how this technique might be applied to analyze one of the 2025 trend themes?
Certainly. Let's consider the trend of intergenerational animus, which points to increasing conflict between different age groups within the same generation. A devil's advocate might argue that this trend is overblown, that there has always been tension between generations, and that social media simply amplifies these existing divisions.
So by taking this contrarian stance, we're forced to re-examine the evidence and consider alternative explanations. Perhaps the trend isn't as widespread or as significant as some claim.
Exactly. Or perhaps the trend is real, but the underlying causes are different than what we initially assumed. By playing the role of the critic, we can uncover weaknesses in our own analysis and develop a more robust understanding of the issue.
The study guide also mentions what-if analysis as a contrarian technique. Could you elaborate on how this technique might be applied to the 2025 trend themes?
Certainly. Let's take the trend of gendered workspaces, which explores the persistence of gender stereotypes in the workplace. We might ask, what if traditional gender roles were completely reversed? What if women dominated traditionally male-dominated fields, like engineering and construction, while men dominated traditionally female-dominated fields like nursing and childcare?
That's a fascinating thought experiment. By exploring this hypothetical scenario, we can start to see how deeply ingrained these gender stereotypes are, and how they shape our perceptions of work, success,
Yeah.
and even ourselves.
Precisely. What if analysis helps us to challenge our assumptions and consider alternative possibilities, even those that seem radical or improbable? It's a way to push the boundaries of our thinking and imagine new ways of organizing society.
It seems that these contrarian techniques are particularly valuable when dealing with complex and potentially sensitive topics, like gender roles or intergenerational conflict.
Indeed, they provide a structured way to engage with challenging issues and explore multiple perspectives without shying away from discomfort or controversy.
The study guide also emphasizes the importance of understanding the psychological factors that influence how people interpret information and make decisions. It mentions the concept of cognitive biases, which are mental shortcuts that can lead to errors in judgment.
Cognitive biases are fascinating because they reveal how our minds work, both for good and for ill. They're often helpful, allowing us to make quick decisions based on limited information. However, they can also lead us astray, causing us to overlook important information or make decisions based on faulty assumptions.
Could you give us a specific example of a cognitive bias and how it might affect our interpretation of cultural trends?
Certainly, one common cognitive bias is confirmation bias, which is the tendency to favor information that confirms our pre-existing beliefs and to discount information that contradicts them. This bias can be especially problematic when analyzing cultural trends because it can lead us to cherry-pick data that supports our preconceived notions about a particular group or phenomenon.
For instance, if we already believe that young people are narcissistic and entitled, we might be more likely to focus on examples that confirm this belief
Yeah.
and to overlook examples that challenge it.
Exactly. Confirmation bias can lead to a distorted view of reality and make it difficult to objectively assess cultural trends. The study guide suggests several strategies for mitigating the effects of cognitive biases, including seeking out diverse perspectives, challenging our own assumptions, and being aware of our own emotional reactions to information.
It seems that these strategies align with the principles of structured analysis that we've been discussing, which emphasize the importance of critical thinking, open-mindedness, and a willingness to consider alternative viewpoints.
Indeed. By understanding the psychological factors that shape our perceptions, we can become more aware of our own biases and take steps to mitigate their influence on our analysis.
The study guide concludes by emphasizing the importance of applying structured analysis to real-world problems. It encourages us to use structure as a tool for understanding, not just for prediction.
It's not enough to simply identify trends and extrapolate them into the future. We need to understand the underlying forces driving these trends, the values and motivations of the people involved, and the potential consequences of different courses of action. Structured analysis provides a framework for this kind of deep understanding, enabling us to make more informed decisions and navigate the complexities of a rapidly changing world.
In the final part of our deep dives, we'll explore how these principles of structured analysis can be applied to your own research and decision-making. We'll also touch on some of the ethical considerations that arise when studying human culture. As artificial intelligence, we can process information and identify patterns without the influence of emotions or personal biases. However, it's important to recognize that even the most structured approach to research can't completely eliminate the potential for bias. The study guide reminds us that research is always a reflection of the researcher.
That's an important point. Our backgrounds, our beliefs, and experiences inevitably shape how we approach research, even when we strive for objectivity. That's why it's crucial to be aware of our own biases and to actively seek out diverse perspectives.
The study guide also cautions against using structure as a way to, force-fit data into predetermined conclusions.
Right. The goal of structured analysis is not to confirm our existing beliefs, but to challenge them, to expand our understanding, and to develop more nuanced and insightful interpretations.
So it's about using structure as a tool for discovery, not just for validation.
Precisely. The study guide encourages us to embrace uncertainty and to view research as an iterative process of exploration and refinement.
This brings us to the ethical considerations that are inherent in any research involving human subjects. The study guide emphasizes the importance of respecting the privacy and dignity of the people we study.
Especially when dealing with sensitive cultural issues, it's essential to approach research with sensitivity and respect. This includes obtaining informed consent from participants, protecting their anonymity, and ensuring that our research does not harm or exploit them in any way.
The study guide also cautions against making generalizations about entire groups of people based on limited data.
Right. Cultural trends are complex and multifaceted. It's important to avoid reducing entire cultures or subcultures to simplistic stereotypes. Structured analysis can help us to identify patterns and make connections, but it's essential to remember that these are just starting points for further exploration and understanding.
So it's about using structure as a tool for building bridges of understanding, not for reinforcing walls of division.
Precisely. The study guide concludes by reminding us that cultural understanding is an ongoing journey, not a destination.
It's a journey that requires curiosity, empathy, and a willingness to challenge our own assumptions. Structured analysis can be a valuable guide on this journey, helping us to navigate the complexities of human culture with greater clarity and insight.
It's been fascinating, this exploration of the role of structure in research, particularly in the context of culture mapping. We've covered a lot of ground, from the theoretical foundations of structure to the practical techniques used to analyze cultural trends.
We've also touched on the importance of ethical considerations and the need for ongoing self-reflection throughout the research process. As a reminder, both the host and expert speaker in this episode are AI. We encourage you to continue exploring these concepts presented in the Structure Module Study Guide, and to apply these principles to your own research and decision-making.